In this Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning guide video, we're going to be taking a look at might builds and why you might play a pure might build or why you might hybrid with finesse or sorcery. First up, let's take a look at pure might builds. Let's go all the way down the destinies here to warlord. The bonus you get here at the end is last stand, which automatically resurrects you if you die, but your health drains until you kill an enemy. You don't get that unless you go all the way down. That's a pretty good bonus, but at the same time, I don't like bonuses, and I've said this many times about other games, that are expecting you to fail. You should give you things that prevent you from failing because they're good. So this isn't the greatest bonus ever, and if you wanted to, you know, go down one to like Conqueror and spend some points in another skill tree like finesse or sorcery, it probably wouldn't be that bad of an option, and you probably wouldn't notice that much of a difference. You will lose out on some melee damage, block efficacy, stun duration, and stun chance to stun if you do that, but it's not a staggering amount, so it shouldn't be the end of the world. Honestly, I think by the time you get to last stand and you have 109 points into might, you should be good enough at the game or have good enough equipment at the game, even on the hardest difficulties, that you're not dying that often. And a lot of times you die from silly mistakes, so this is probably something that, you know, isn't a must-have. That said, you may want to make a pure might build because you want all the abilities in the might ability tree, so that's something to consider. If you, plan on spending all your points there anyway because you like the abilities and you want to upgrade everything there, that's a fine reason to make a pure might build. But I don't think you should build it solely based on this destiny at the end here. Now, talking about hybrid builds, let's look at might finesse first. Really, the reason to take a might finesse build, a hybrid build, there's only a few reasons you're going to do this. First, you're either going to be trying to add a bow into your rotation, so you have, maybe your greatsword or your hammer or your longsword or whatever you have there, and you want a ranged weapon in your secondary slot and you want it to be a bow. That's a good reason to take finesse. Another reason would be if you like the abilities in might, but you want to use fey blades or you want to use daggers as your primary weapon, that would be another reason to hybrid. Though you don't have to hybrid if you want to do that, because you can still get all the points in might and still get those weapon types. And lastly, maybe you're playing a melee might build, but you want to add some poison and bleeds to your build. Finesse can make these much more effective through some of its abilities, and it can also increase your critical damage with blade honing, so there is some synergy there. There is also a nice mobility skill on lunge if you're playing a might build that allows you to get behind an enemy. So if you're using like a greatsword, for example, it can set you up for that long swing where you're not getting attacked. Looking over the destinies for the might finesse, Blade Master is the last tier, and the last ability gives you plus 15% physical damage, some health steal, and extra gold. It's not the greatest ability ever, it just kind of gives you a flat damage increase and some health. So what I would strongly recommend doing is if you're playing a might build, consider taking Slayer instead, place most of your points in might, and then put the rest in finesse in order to get the, support abilities you want there. The only exception to that would be if you really, really fell in love with the bow and you want to use the bow very, very effectively, you're going to need to probably split these in half so then you could take Blade Master, because you have to get up pretty high into the bow tree to get some of the better abilities. Now, if you're talking about a might sorcery build, you're obviously going to be taking sorcery to increase your elemental damage, or to add spells to your repertoire in between your melee attacks. Maybe you weaken enemies with a big AoE spell and then you go in and finish them off. That would be sort of the playstyle you're looking at if you're doing a might sorcery build. Or maybe you just want to use some of the sorcery weapons like staves or scepters or chakrams as your secondary weapon, or maybe even your primary weapon, but you want to have some of the might abilities. Let's just pretend for the moment that you're planning on playing a might-based build where you're going to use a greatsword or a hammer or a longsword, but you just want to supplement it with sorcery, because I can cover sort of the other side of that in the sorcery video about sorcery might builds. Now, looking over the champion destiny, which is the final destiny in the might sorcery line, you're going to get harmonic overload, which gives you a chance to produce elemental projectiles per kill. I don't know what the chance for this to proc is or how much damage these projectiles do, but this is not a bad final bonus because a lot of warrior bonuses benefit you killing enemies. You're trying to kill enemies quickly in order to build up damage buffs that increase your damage over time. So this could help propel that forward in sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Additionally, I think if you are playing a might sorcery build, unless you're just taking a few points in sorcery in order to get like some of the weapon masteries there and maybe like a couple buffs or something, you're probably going to want to split your points pretty heavily between might and sorcery, because they're just simply really good abilities on both sides. And you can get a lot of effective spells. You probably need like at least 50 points to get all the way up to Tempest, which is the top of the lightning ability line. It's probably what you're going to be looking for if you're playing a might build, is playing a lightning might build. It's probably the best synergy out of all the different spell types between ice, shocking, and burning or fire. Mostly because the Stormbolt ability has the chance to stun enemies, And Might, if you look at Concussive Force, actually gives you more damage against stunned enemies. So you might throw, Stormbolt in there, stun an enemy, run in, hit him with a greatsword, boom, dead. And that's a very nice synergy. Actually, I'm working on a build right now that revolves around that, so make sure to get that out as soon as I can. But you're probably going to be looking at something like that, or casting a spell like Tempest, and then going in and attacking. Looking over the destinies, I think probably Pure Might or Might Sorcery are the strongest here. I mean, as soon as you hit Conqueror in the Might line, you gain a 17% chance to stun. That is absolutely insane. You go from 0% chance to 17% chance from Warrior to Conqueror. If you max this out and get 5 points into it and then get 2 extra points from like a gear or whatever, a bonus, so you get 7 points total, which is as high as it goes, you're getting 80% increased damage against stun targets, and you have a 20% chance to stun them. That's on top of any other ability that you use that stuns them, which is insane. I mean, that's a huge amount of damage. And I think the thing about sorcery, besides the fact that it synergizes like really well with stunning, which I mentioned before, is that it gives you some AoE effectiveness. You can still get some AoEs, like if you're using a greatsword, because one of the abilities allows you to whirlwind. But I think this gives you a little more versatility. At range, you can AoE things down a bit easier. And while you can still do that with Might Finesse, you would take a lot of investment into bow in order to get there. And I think you can get that AoE a lot easier earlier in the magic skill line. This concludes our video on Might builds for Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning. I'm going to do one more video on sorcery builds. I've already done one on finesse, so make sure you check that out if you need to. I'm going to be streaming the game a bit again next week. I'll be off this weekend doing the Outer Worlds and a couple other games, but we'll be back with Kingdoms of Amalur next week. So if you want to stop by, ask questions about the game, do build talk, whatever, feel free. And also be sure to check out our wiki if you have questions about the game.